I was struggling to reach under 4, which translates into 5 minutes and 45 seconds per kilometer. I transitioned into a 5 minutes per kilometer runner.
How was the experience of going from a sea level place to Ladakh and then running?
Immediately after the Amsterdam Marathon, I had a huge injury in terms of calf injury. Running alone does not give you strength. In fact, running takes away the strength from your body. As you grow older, the heart rates has to keep coming down. Most of the runners struggle not with the lower body strength but with the upper body strength. आप प्रोटीन भी खा लो, आप 100 ग्राम्स का प्रोटीन भी एक्स्ट्रा खा लो, that will eventually turn into fat only. The ability of the body to process non-vegetarian food to generate amino acids is faster as compared to a vegetarian diet. The way I started the marathon and then finished the marathon to what transpired next was the most toughest part of my entire running career to date.
But so, Prudhvi, this brings me to an important point that it's just the willpower which pushed you. There are multiple different motivating factors which helped you push through it. But I'm sure if you go back in time, if you could, you would not want to do that or would not recommend this for anybody. That you should push and just do it irrespective, because it may cause you injury for a very, very long term. अब वो limping वाला point है, that could have gone on for a long time, if not forever, which is not the right thing to do. That brings me to an important point. Say for example, today I want to run. What should a beginner focus on? Or another way of putting it is, if you were to start all over again, what are things you would want, given that now you have so much information, you would keep in mind so that you can prepare well for an eventual goal of running a marathon? So let me give you another example. Say for example, there is a person who cannot run for more than 100 meters. ठीक है, अब वो 100 मीटर हैज टू ट्रांसपायर इनटू अ 42 किलोमीटर पेस. एक तो है कि दे नीड टू शो इंटेंट एंड डिसिप्लिन ऑन द एंटायर वर्कआउट विच कैन बी क्रिएटेड फॉर देम, पर करना तो खुद ही है. हाउ वुड यू गो अबाउट इट? हाउ डू यू रिकमेंड वन शुड गो अबाउट इट?
So I'll start off with what I had done wrong and then take you to the
whatever you feel is right.
So yeah, what I did was stupid. And there are no two ways about it. And if I were to recommend anybody, what I did from 38 to 42 kilometers was madness. Nobody should do that. And there are no two ways about it. You should listen to your body. And the moment you feel that the pain is beyond a certain point in time, you should stop the race. That is something which is learned the hard way. And it is very, very important that we listen to the body in these long distance running. So, one piece of advice, no, do not continue like the way I did. That is a mistake. As you rightly said, it could have gone on for 6 months. It could have been a real fracture in itself, and then I would have completely had to stop running. So that is a no-no. So to answer your next question about what a beginner should do and how beginners should start, one advice which I will tell beginners is that start slow. It is very important that we start slow, accumulate those miles on the ground first before you think about pushing harder. For any beginner, you cannot get the motivation unless you register for a race. So that is a given. I mean, I always respect people who register for a race and start preparing, because that is inherent to our human nature, that unless we register for something, we will not start acting upon it. Procrastination will come into picture. So it is better you start. But having said that, do not have unrealistic goals. One of the biggest mistakes which I did when I started out running was I had a lot of unrealistic goals. I finished the 10 kilometers in 61 minutes. Now I wanted to do a 59 minutes just because I wanted a section A cutoff. Maybe yes, I could have done that. But what have I done from February to June to achieve that? Nothing. So I cannot just transform myself that one fine day I do a 61 minutes and then do a 59 minute without doing anything in between. So, if you have any target in mind, first of all set lower targets, and if you do have any target in mind, just listen and start reading about what is it that it takes to reach that. And for any active beginner who wants to start running, it is very important that they run at least 2 to 3 times in a week. That is the first and the foremost thing.
Sorry, but can I break that into one thing? Say, for example, there's a person who wants to start running. They want to do 42. How will that gradually look like? Can you tell us that?
Okay. So, see, the distance to the 42 has to be first broken down into doing a 5K, doing a 10K, doing a 21K and doing the 42K.
Okay.
To that extent, my journey of running a 42 was correct. Where I went wrong is not in taking these distances. I have done 21 kilometers, I have done an under 2 before I ran a 42. Everything went as per the plan as far as my running journey goes. What did not go as per the plan was that I was too fast too soon in moving from one distance to another, and I was very inconsistent in my training. Okay. That is the second mistake, and the second mistake is the most costliest mistake. So, I ran a 10 kilometers and then I moved to a 21 kilometers, and ran a 21, I moved to a 42. What I did in between is where the inconsistency lies.
So what is a good thing? Like if I were a person who wanted to do it, and as I said, I want to start afresh, what's the right amount of what should I be doing? Okay. For how long?
Correct. So, for any 10 kilometers or 5 kilometers, physiologically, our bodies are trained in case, so depending on the weight, age factors and the amount of physical activities which you have done during your life. For a 10 kilometers, you can prepare for a 6 to 8 weeks leading into the event, and once so if you are able to run 2 to 3 runs per week and a 6 to 8 week program for a 10 kilometers, you will be able to do 10 kilometers. Setting aside the paces aside, matlab, so let's say you want to do it in 65 minutes, 70 minutes or 90 minutes.
पर मुझे लगता है पृथ्वी ये तो मतलब sorry but I'm just giving my point of view here. मुझे लगता है कि when you are approaching a distance for the first time, you should not be thinking of a time. You should be just thinking about first completing it, and as you said, completing it in a manner where a strong finish. Like for example, अब तूने 4 घंटे का सोचा, irrespective of 4 hours, if you would have thought about कि let me finish strong, you would have, I don't know, you may have run the race very differently. तो I generally approach a view कि जब भी मैं पहली बार कोई बड़ा distance run कर रहा होता हूँ, I just feel that people should not be thinking of a time. I don't know what you think about it.
It's a very good thought. In fact, if you can do that, nothing like it. But 90% of us cannot maintain that thought. That invariably, you somewhere deep down at unconscious level, the thought of time comes in.
Okay.
It is good if one can maintain it, but then unfortunate though that the moment you kickstart running, once you finish the first kilometer in a certain time, your mind starts giving you signals that I can do the second kilometer, and then multiplication factor do come in. Okay. If someone can really not think about it and finishing strong is the should be one's goal, that is one of the best things that can happen. But especially when you are into individual training, that is where I want to talk more about, because group training there is a coach who will assist you, who will give you program, who can guide you. In individual training, the first and the foremost thing is that have that timing out of your mind. If you can do that, well, nothing like it. But if you cannot do that, all you need to do is that even though you have timing in your mind, your primary goal should be to finish strong. Your primary goal should be to be able to walk after the race gets over.
Got it.
That is the first and the foremost thing. Okay. So have a 10 kilometer as the first event, or a 5 kilometers depending on your physical activities, but 10 kilometers is something which we can start. Okay. And a 6 to 8 week program is what you can do. Once you are once you have finished your 10-kilometer distance, typically a 6 months to 12 months is a good window to move to 21.
So you should be doing 10K to begin with.
Correct.
Prepare for 6 to 8 weeks before that.
Correct.
Do at least 2 to 3 runs every week.
Correct.
Moving into the final run.
Correct.
And once you're done the 10K, should you again do 10K couple of times before going to 21, or should you start preparing for 21 just after that?
It is advisable you run one more 10K, 1 to 2 more 10K, so that you understand how what mistakes have you done in your first 10K, and more so in case if you feel that you have not thought about a time earlier, so that you can understand what is your good timing for another 10K. So that 6 to 8 weeks program, you needn't even have to register for a race. You can just go ahead and train your body to a 10 kilometers. So then 6 to 12 months in, you can register for a 21K. As the 10K program was for 6 to 8 weeks, the 21K should be at least 12 weeks.
Okay.
At least 12 weeks, 16 is a good time. So 12 to 16 weeks is when you can do a 21K program. The main difference between a 10K and a 21K is that you need to start incorporating strength training into your 21K program along with your runs. So let's say you have a week, you are running 2 to 3 times a week, increase it to 3 to 4 times a week, and a minimum of 1 strength training per week is essential. Okay. I'll talk about strength training and what is it and why is it important for the beginners. So strength training essentially is a technique which is used to improve your running, more importantly to adapt the body to the physiological needs of running. Strength training helps you for the body to get better with the impact which running causes. Running alone does not give you strength. In fact, running takes away the strength from your body.
Okay.
So it is imperative and important that runners incorporate strength training into their regime before they even think about doing a 21 kilometers. So what is strength training? Strength training typically is about lifting some bit of weights. You can do lot of it at home through body weight itself. A 45-minute to a 1 hour program focusing majorly on your major muscles on your legs, which is quadriceps, hamstrings, calf muscles, glute muscles, and some bit of your upper body muscles, which is your shoulders, back and triceps. So this is something which is very crucial and very important for runners to transition from a 10K to a 21K. Along with your strength training, you can also add core, because at the end of the day when you are running from your core and not from your legs. I'll touch base on core strength and other things later. So core and strength training is important, and from a 10K to a 21K, what is important is in preparation to 21K, you should have certain mileage which you need to cover so that you are well prepared for the race. So what is a good mileage? If you were to point out in terms of distance, it is roughly around 300 to 400 kilometers is a minimum mileage which somebody has to do leading up to 21K from the time you are.
Which was like 700 for you in 1.5 years.
Correct.
But tell me one thing, ये जो strength training की बात हो रही है उसमें तो are we expecting that somebody has to join a gym or not, कि घर पे भी कर सकते हैं, और कर सकते हैं तो क्या कर सकते हैं? Like if you could also talk about that as well.
Yeah, very important, because most of us wouldn't want to go to gym because we are all compulsive gymmers.
You might not be privileged enough to go to a gym यार, मतलब gym membership भी अलग scam है, वो एक अलग चीज़ है. Scam for a lot of people who are convinced and are putting in that time and effort, उनके लिए तो obviously बहुत अच्छा है, but सब लोगों की capability might be an issue ना. Intent नहीं भी है तो, intent issue नहीं भी है तो capability might be an issue. तो how can they do this? क्योंकि देखो मैं ये मानता हूँ रनिंग है, आपके पास खुली जगह है, सड़क है, आप भाग सकते हो, 1000 रुपये का जूता लो, अच्छा जूता आ जाता है, उसके बाद जो भी बेटर हो रहा है. बट स्ट्रेंथ ट्रेनिंग अगर इनकॉपरेट करनी है एंड यू डो नॉट हैव द privilege to go to a gym, what can somebody do at home? That is also an important thought. I thought if you can touch on.
Yeah, it is important, and in fact there is no difference between going to a gym and doing a strength training at home.
Okay.
Your body weight is as good as going to a gym and lifting weights. So there is no correlation between going to the gym, doing powerlifting vis-a-vis doing it at
And
home.
आप रनर में तो पावर लिफ्टिंग करना भी नहीं चाह रहे हो ना. You're just trying to strengthen the muscles you're using more often, if I'm not wrong.
Correct. Running is a repetitive sport. It is all about poetry in motion, running in motion. So it is all about the next step which you are taking. As long as your body is able to take that next step, you are through. So for that, you need to understand the entire body mechanics as to how it functions and what kind of exercises do you need to incorporate to get better at it. So largely there are 3 to 4 important muscles which we need to understand, and how do we need to strengthen them, that is
Okay.
important. So one is the glutes muscles, next is my hamstrings, third is my quadriceps, and fourth are my calf muscles. These are my large muscles which are very important and critical from a runner's perspective. So all of these 4 muscles can be strengthened at home using body exercises.
Okay.
Most of the common exercises are squats, lunges, wall sit-ups. These 3 to 4 exercises are sufficient for us to build strength.
पुशअप पुलअप से भी फर्क पड़ता है.
I will come to the upper body later. Okay. So these are your lower body exercises. Okay. These are sufficient. So all you need to do is just start with a 15 reps program, do 3 sets, and between each set take a minute's rest and do it for 25 to 30 minutes. That will ensure that over a period of time your body is able to cope up with the exertion that is happening through running. So now these are my lower body exercises. One thing which is overlooked by most of the seasonal runners as well, let alone the beginners, is the upper body exercises, and that is where what you touched upon related to push-ups, pull-ups come in. My shoulder strength and my back strength are equally important along with my lower muscle strength, because running form changes very differently the moment your shoulder strength is weak. Most of the runners struggle not with the lower body strength but with the upper body strength.
और प्लस भागते भागते आपके शोल्डर भी अप हो जाते हैं ना थोड़ा.
Exactly. So the moment you can see that a runner is struggling is when his shoulders are shrugged. He is not able to move his arms because there is not enough upper body strength in him. He is leaning forward, his back is getting hurt. All these things are the most common mistakes which you do. For that is when the the push-ups, pull-ups, core exercises come in, because core strength also helps you strengthen your lower back. So your lower back, your push-ups, pull-ups, and your leg exercises. A program which is typically a 45 minutes to a 1 hour is sufficient.
और अगर घर पे भी हो और अगर तुम्हें थोड़ा लग भी रहा है, इफ यू वांट मोर वेट, घर पे कोई ना कोई वेट होता है, जस्ट पिक दैट अप. आई थिंक तो वाटर बॉटल भी उठा लोगे तो 1-1 किलो के हो जाएंगे, मतलब इफ यू आर फिल्ड. आई डोंट नो, just
Correct.
trying to make.
So 2 liter, so 1 liter water bottle each on both the hands, and do the lunges, 15 to 20 reps. Walking lunges is one of the better exercises as compared to lifting the bar, because you don't know whether posture is going wrong, whether you are not able to lift the weight, you are pushing too hard too soon, which may lead to your injury, whereas this is the most easiest and the convenient way. One more important thing which I would also recommend beginners to try out is the elastic bands, the loops which they call them, because the resistance bands they are called, because that is something which will essentially help the runners at a very low cost of 500 to 600 rupees to strengthen their body multiple times. So all you need to do is just use those 2 resistance bands, do the gluteus muscles exercises. There are enough and more YouTube videos which are available today, and do a push up pull up with the band covering your both the hands, and then just do that, so that there is resistance coming into your body, and then you are able to do that. That is it. So that is on the strength training aspects, and this is a must, because that is when your body is ready to take the impact which your running is where running is giving you. So now that on the strength training aspect. So you are running 2 to 3 times a week, and you are able to incorporate 1 to 2 strength training, and 12 to 12, 14 weeks is sufficient for 21k. Okay. Now so that is for a 21 kilometers. Between a 21 kilometer and a 42 kilometers, for any runner, if depending on his age and the fitness levels, it is important that he is able to do at least 5 to 6 21 kilometers with a gap of 2 to 3 months before he between each, which essentially gives you a time frame of around 2 years roughly before you transition into 42 kilometers. So that is something which you need to incorporate. I'll talk about the entire 42 kilometers plan and everything different. Because that is something which will go in detail as to how the schedule should be, what they need to do and what you need to incorporate. But I'll take a step back now, because when you are running from 10 kilometers to 21 kilometers, you also as a runner need to understand the runs and what kind of runs do you need to incorporate into your running, so that you become a better runner. So though you are waiting for 2 years to run a 42, within the 21 kilometers itself, it is better that you start building some different kinds of runs so that you are becoming a better runner.
मतलब run तो run है मेरे हिसाब से, but please.
So I mean, runs are runs at the end of the day. You'll have to go out and run, but to improve your physiology, there are certain kinds of runs which you need to incorporate so that you become a better runner.
Okay.
I'll give you 3-4 kinds of runs. One is your easy jog which you are running, and one is the long distance run, which is essentially when you are running 21 kilometers, you are running around 17 to 18 kilometers. These are the most simple and the basic runs.
So are you saying long runs in easy jog?
So what I am saying is, there is something known as an easy run, which is 6 to 7 kilometers, which you are running on a weekday.
Okay, got it. Okay. Now I get it.
That, and a long run typically done on a weekend, which is around 17 to 18 kilometers.
So that you can rest after that.
So that you get rest and your body gets enough rest for the next day. This is the end of one end of the spectrum is the easy run, the other end of the spectrum is the long run. In between, there are 2 to 3 different types of runs which a runner should incorporate, so that he becomes an efficient runner. So the first of that run kind is the pace run.
Okay.
The second is the interval run, and the third is the tempo run.
Okay.
So I'll talk about each of it. So the pace runs are where you are able to run at the fastest possible pace for at least 5 kilometers.
Okay.
So before you do a pace run, it is better you start off with a warm up of 5 to 10 minutes so that your body gets accustomed, and then run at a pace where you are able to hold that pace for 5 kilometers.
And that's the maximum pace your body can do?
And at the maximum pace which a body can take, 5 kilometers. For 5 kilometers. So you begin with the 5 kilometers and gradually take it up to 10 kilometers.
For the pace run?
For the pace runs.
Okay.
Pace runs, while preparing for a 21 kilometers, the maximum distance you can do is 10 kilometers.
Okay.
So that is a pace run. The second is an interval run.
Okay.
What is an interval run is that you are running for a certain distance and then you are slowing down for a certain distance, which to most of our beginners is a natural form of running.
मतलब आप भागते हो फिर वो रुकते हो, like you did with from your 30 to 42.
Correct.
Effectively was interval कि 300 meters you ran, then 200 meters you walked, which is slowing down, then again ran. Is that what you're meaning?
Correct. Looking back, that is what an interval running is essentially. Correct.
Just trying to understand.
Though both were very slow at that point in time, but interval running typically is about running for, let's say, 500 meters, jogging for 300 meters.
But is that 500 meters like a very, very fast run, like a hard run?
Yes. So that 500 meters should be faster than your pace run.
Okay, got it.
So your 500 meters should be faster than your pace run, 5k pace run, and your 300 meters should be as slow as the walk, as slow as a run where you can converse with yourself. So typically you're slower than your slower runs, let's say.
अच्छा,
Or you can walk.
easy run से
हाँ,
थोड़ा
easy run से भी slow walk भी कर सकते हो आप.
so essentially it's like it's the you are recuperating your heart rate
Correct.
because heart rate your heart rate will really shoot through your heart run
Correct.
phase जो कि
Correct.
500 meters वाला होगा.
Correct.
So just to get it down to a level where you can easily talk
Correct.
and if you can
Correct.
jog through that then very
Correct.
good. Otherwise you can run, you can walk also.
Correct.
Is what you're saying. Okay.
Correct. So you're running. So you start off with a 500 meters fast run, 300 meters walk, and do that repetition for 4 to 5 times.
Okay.
So start off with a 1 kilometer warm up again. Do that. Do this for 4 to 5 times, 500 and the 300 meters by 4 to 5 times, and then cool down with a 1 kilometer run.
Okay.
This is one kind of interval run.
Okay.
Okay. The second kind of interval run is where you are going all out for 800 meters and not walking. You are just stopping. You are stopping. You are running for 800 meters, taking a pause for 90 seconds, just staying at that place. Then let the body cool down, and then do that again for 5 to 6 times.
Okay. Got it.
So you are running, stopping. This 800 meters is when by the end of 800 meters you will really be struggling for breath.
So hard run.
Hard, very hard run, all out runs.
Max.
Max. So the technical aspects of it is that by the end of that you should be struggling to finish, but by 90 seconds you should be ready to go. That is how you train your body.
Okay.
For the hard impact, but for a shorter duration.
Okay.
Both interval runs are for that.
Okay. Got it.
Then comes the third aspect, which is your tempo run.
Okay.
Typically, a tempo run is slower than a pace run,
Okay.
but not as easy run as the easy runs or your long runs.
Okay.
Tempo runs are where you are able to maintain a consistent pace throughout the duration of the run, that your body is struggling but not giving up. So typically a tempo run lasts for 30 to 45 minutes, but the entire duration of the run you are running at that same tempo. The English word tempo, you are in a tempo, you are moving at a tempo pace, you are moving
You're
in
maintaining a tempo.
You are maintaining a tempo. So it's like one constant pace which you are able to do. All these three different runs are for different purposes. I'll talk about the physiological aspects of each and every run, why those runs are important. Okay.
So what does say pace solve? What does interval solve? And what does tempo
Correct.
solve?
Yeah. So yes. So a pace run and an interval run essentially helps us in building the cardiovascular capacity. Okay. Now there are three important elements which every runner has to take care when he is improving his physiological aspects. Okay. One is the resting heart, the heart rates when he is running. The second is the VO2 max, and the third is the lactate threshold. These are the three aspects which a runner needs to keep in mind when he is thinking about running. Subconsciously, you needn't have to practice for any of those, but eventually they will come into picture. Okay. I will talk about each and every aspect of what I am talking about. First is the heart rate. So most of the devices which we use have certain heart rate zones, as they are called, from zone 1 to zone 2 to zone 3, zone 4 and zone 5. Okay. Zone 5 being the hardest range and zone 1 being the easiest range. Okay. These are just indicators. You can also train your body without having a watch to get there, but as an amateur runner, if you can afford, you should do that.
अब तो काफी सस्ती हो गई है.
सस्ती भी हो गई, हाँ करेक्ट. सो 5,000 में मिल जाता है वैसे, बट स्टिल आई मीन जस्ट टू टेक आउट ऑफ कॉन्टेक्स्ट, द फास्टेस्ट ब्रिटिश मैराथनर टुडे who has run at 2 hours and 6 minutes uses a polo watch, sorry, a Casio watch, which costs 1100 rupees. But he understands his body much better. So just to put in context, so it is not that it is required, but if you can afford, it is better. You invest in a basic watch which gives you this. So the first is the heart rate. the slow runs, which is my easy runs and the long runs, you should run in zone 3 and zone 2.
Can you explain these zones?
So the zones essentially are where you are running at a certain heart rate. So let's say now we are sitting and conversing. Our heart rates are around 70 to 80 beats per minute. The moment you start running, your heart rate increases.
Right.
It shoots up anywhere to 110 to 120 within the first minute of your run.
True.
Typically, for a beginner, there are runners who may run at a little lower heart rate, but typically this is where it should. If you run fast, in no time this 110 reaches 160.
Right.
Okay. And then after that, if you are a very good runner, it may reach up to 180, 190, but you can never sustain that heart rates. So those are the peak of heart rates which you can reach. I mean, there are people where the heart rates reach as high as 190, 200 beats per minute as well. So to make life easier to understand, so there are the heart rates are divided into zones. Zone 1, which is typically 100 to 120 beats per minute. Zone 2, which is 120 to 140 in the 20 beats minutes range. Zone 3, 140 to 160. Zone 4, 160 to 180, and zone 5 is greater than 180. This is typically what the zones are, but that doesn't mean that these are the only zones which needs to be followed, because as you grow older, the heart rates has to keep coming down. There are various studies about what should be your maximum heart rate, where most of the adapted techniques is about 180 minus your age is a good slow heart rate to have. For example, I am 37, so 180 minus 37, which brings me roughly around 143 is where 143 is my good slow heart rate to have.
While running.
While running. I am talking about while
running. So when you say that, and I think that's a good point. So because I've also learned about this rule of 180 minus age. Obviously, somebody who's younger, ideally their heart rate shouldn't be going as high as, say, somebody who's older. Their heart rate will pick up very quickly for the same amount of work done.
Okay.
Because if somebody is 60 years old, 180 minus 60 will be 120 actually.
It's the other way around.
It's the opposite.
Oh, it's the opposite. It's
because
the opposite.
Subtracting.
It is exactly the opposite, yes.
Okay, got it. So when we are saying an easy run, what are we talking about zones then?
Yes.
So in an easy run, which zone should you be in?
The ideal one is to run in zone 2.
Zone 2. And zone 2 would be
120 to 140 for
120 to 140
for our age groups. Correct.
That should be the easy run.
Correct.
Tempo run is in what range?
So tempo runs typically are in the zone 4 range.
Zone 4 is
160 to 180 range.
160 to 180. And 180. You said tempo should be done for 35-40 minutes.
Correct.
Body sustain kar liye?
Yes. So 160 to 180 is just a number. For a 60-year-old, probably your zone 4 will be only 140 to 150.
Which is fine.
I'm
talking about, say, a typical person who's your age.
Correct.
Or somebody who's younger.
Correct.
So 10 beats per minute will be changing here and there for them.
Yes.
So you figure out your zones.
Correct.
And zone 5 is max. Zone 4 is just below that, which is used for tempo. What are you saying? Pace would be zone 3, is it?
No. Pace will be where you are touching zone 4 and zone 5.
Okay.
Pace will be where, tempo is where you are touching zone 3, zone 4. Pace will be zone 4, zone 5.
Okay, got it.
So most of the marathons are run in zone 4.
So tell me, let's make it more basic. If it is, say, somebody who's a 30-year-old person who wants to run, let's apply the 180 rule there. 180 minus 30 is 150. अब इसका टेम्पो रन क्या होना चाहिए, इसका ये पेस रन क्या होना चाहिए, थोड़ा सा मैथ करके बताओ ना.
Correct. So 180 minus 30 is 150. That is his easy rate. Okay. Now for an easy run, anything less than 150 for him is considered as an easy run. Okay. It is better. He also maintains this heart rate into the long runs as well.
Okay. Got it.
So easy runs and long runs typically are at your 150 beats per minute.
And have 150 BPM इससे ज़्यादा नहीं.
Correct.
चाहे वो easy run हो 6-7 kilometers done 2-3 times a week, और once a week वाला long run जो है उसमें भी 150 का max heart rate maintain करे. Okay, got it.
Correct.
Pace में क्या करें?
So the moment he is touching the pace, He can go as high as 175 to 185. He can do that because 180 is the, so basic, there is one more rule. So the first rule is 180 minus age to get to your easy rate and 220 minus your age to get your maximal heart rate.
अभी तो 180 को फॉलो करते हैं ना चलो.
180 minus 30, 180 minus 30 is 150 where you are easy runs. Okay. Why 220 minus 30 is also important is 190 becomes your maximum HR. So you do not go beyond 190 throughout your run, but you are there at 175 to 180 for your maximum. So pace runs. Okay. And your tempo runs, you are at 165 to 175.
So you're saying that two things important. 180 वाला जो number है, it is for you to figure out how to run. 220 वाला जो है minus the age is the max heart rate. You should never cross that. So ideally, even if somebody is 30, their easy runs should be 150ish, small runs में और long runs में, and they also shouldn't never cross 190 BPM ideally.
Correct.
Cross हो गया तो अलग बात है कभी-कभी.
Correct.
But they should not be crossing. So your long runs 150 के अंदर होने चाहिए, ideally towards 150. Because आप कम करोगे तो मतलब you're not pushing hard enough, and your easy runs भी 150 के आसपास होना चाहिए. And when we are talking about pace runs, it should be in what range then for this person?
175 to 185.
175 to 185. So that you're towards the larger range.
Correct.
Tempo runs भी should be around 170.
165 to 170.
165 to 170.
Yeah.
And जो इसके अलावा intervals हैं वो intervals का तो कोई range नहीं ना.
I'll come to intervals. Okay. So I'll also correct one point which you said.
Sorry.
Just because he is running at 150 doesn't mean that he is not pushing in easy runs. In easy runs, he can go as low as 130 as well. It is better he goes at 130.
Okay, why is that?
Why?
You're speaking about easy, not long.
Not easy, long as well. Anything between. So physiologically both run the same way. Long, it is very difficult for somebody to maintain that range over a longer distance of time, whereas in easy you can do that because easy lasts for 30 to 45 minutes. Okay. Why 130 is important is that think of it as an impact sport, think of it as a recovery. The moment you are incorporating easy runs, you are recovering better.
Faster also.
Faster as well. You are running an easy run on Tuesday, you have an interval run coming up on Wednesday. You run an easy run at 150 and sometimes if you want to think about 150, borderline, you go up to 155, 160. Weather is not good or you have not slept well, anything that has happened that triggered it to 155 to 160. The recovery is that much more slower for your interval run. So what happens, you cannot push your interval run. Instead, slow down here as much as possible so that your interval runs becomes that much more critical for you.
Got
So,
it.
then coming to the interval runs, the heart rate, there are two kinds of interval runs, the fast followed by the slow. The fast interval runs should be in and around your pace, which is 170, 175. Physiologically you are improving when your 170, 175 is coming down to your 130, 140 immediately by the end of your easy runs. By the end of your second half of the interval run, which is 500 meter fast and 300 meters I told you. By the end of the 300 meters, if you are able to bring that back to your 150 from 175, then you are physiologically benefiting from doing an interval run.
अच्छा समझा. So interval में ये हो रहा है कि you are pushing till the pace run of 175, 180.
Correct.
But as soon as you slow down for the 300 meters,
correct.
Then at the end of 300 meters, when you're about to begin again,
correct,
your heart rate should have come down to 140ish at least.
Correct.
Or the easy run वाला जो heart rate है,
correct,
उस पे आ जाना चाहिए.
Correct.
So that you can again start
pushing.
And then, so ideally जो for the 30-year-old person जो हम example ले रहे हैं, 175 पे पहुंचना है. After 500 meters, when you're doing the 300 meters, it should bring that down again to 130, 140 वाला level.
Correct.
So that you're prepared again to again do it.
Correct.
So it's like a
the sine curve.
हाँ मतलब cycle है. तो intervals बन गए, समझ गए. So why the word
correct.
interval?
Correct.
And that 800 meter, the other interval you said, उसमें भी फिर 175, 180 करेगा?
There you can go to zone 5.
Which is?
There you can run in 185s.
185.
You are touching 185s by the end of your 800 meters. and then again starting at 120s, 130s, let's say, okay, by the end of those 90
बट
seconds.
90 सेकंड में अगर वहाँ पे नहीं आया तो
See, it will come eventually.
हाँ
It won't come immediately. Okay, that is when you are physiologically improving with these kind of runs.
अच्छा हाँ ठीक है ना बट is it important to come down to 120 130 or is it important to just wait 90 seconds and then go again?
So
Actually you
okay,
can go again also no?
you can go again, you should go again, but what is important is that to understand, good question actually. So if you are running, by the end of your 800 meters you have touched 185 and you waited for 90 seconds and your heart rate is still at 165, that means you are not giving yourself enough time to recover.
Okay.
So you will increase 90 seconds to 120 seconds.
हाँ वही मतलब so it is important to again start at 130.
हाँ 130, 140,
और तो
150,
जितनी बार
but
रिपीट करेंगे the
exactly,
time taken will be lesser ना मतलब
Correct.
कार्डियोवैस्कुलर ऐसे ही improve होगा.
correct, हाँ exactly. So when you are starting your training blocks of 800 meters, you can start off with 2 minutes 30 seconds gap as well, and as you move along into your training block, that 230 will come down to 2 to 130 rest, the rest period. Okay, so that as you move along, by the end of your training cycle, you are able to maintain that 800-meter pace and still be able to recover within 130.
Which I get it now. So
Correct.
and sorry just to complete the loop on and tempo generally किस HR पे होगा?
Tempo is in your zone for 165 to 175.
Oh yeah, we did discuss that.
Correct.
Got it. So sorry, and just to complete the overall session, what you're doing is, say for example somebody is preparing for a 10K run. अभी तो 10K में भी interval कर लिया तो बुराई तो है नहीं.
10K में इंटरवल कर लिया तो बुराई नहीं है. ओके,
But
बट
you're not, चलो अच्छा 21 ही रखते हैं.
करेक्ट 21 रखते हैं.
Somebody is preparing for 21. Essentially they should focus anywhere between 12 to 16 weeks of prepare. Now let's bring down to week. Week में you should be doing at least 2 to 3 to 4 runs.
करेक्ट.
And or rather three runs, let me say that, correct me if I'm wrong. Those 3 runs should be a mix of interval, easy run, all of that, followed by weekend पे एक long run which is done at some pace of around 130 to 140 for a 30-year-old person. The math we took it from 180 minus the age wala. You are doing easy runs 2-3 times a week, obviously incorporating a strength training also you spoke about. What is the frequency of interval trainings like they should be doing one every week, tempo one every week, or like how should you think about those types of run? Because you spoke about pace, tempo and interval. इनका frequency कब होना चाहिए और या क्या होना चाहिए? What should that?
Typically in every week you should have at least one hard run, at least
One hard
one hard run. So pace,
could be
tempo, interval, all of these come under the bracket of hard
तो
run.
इनमें से कोई एक करो.
इनमें से कोई एक कर लो. एक easy definitely होना चाहिए. एक long run definitely होना चाहिए. Okay. So if you are running 3, one easy, one hard, one long, sufficient. Then as you move into the training block, it becomes 4, 2 easy to begin with, 1 hard, 1 long.
Okay.
Then at the peak of your training cycle, 1 easy, 2 hard, 1 long. That should be the way.
And you can just go on a cycle, मतलब as in like इसको एक उसकी तरह ले लेते हैं कि अच्छा week 1 में मैं सिर्फ पेस करूँगा हार्ड रन के लिए.
Correct.
Week 2 में इंटरवल करूँगा उस टाइप का, like type 1 टाइप का.
Correct.
Week 3 में मैं इंटरवल करूँगा टाइप 3 सेकंड टाइप का जो 800 meters and stop 90 seconds वाला.
Correct.
And week 4 में मैं टेम्पो रन
Tempo, correct.
Then week 5 में वापस से पेस करूँगा.
Correct.
But
Yes.
you keep doing your easy runs also.
Correct.
1 or 2 and every Sunday I've noticed most people do long runs on Sundays. Anyway, generally corporate life, professional life में भी easy होता है because longer run कर रहे हो तो you have time the entire Sunday you can take rest and do basic things in life.
Correct.
Got it. Exciting, right? Interesting. Are there some other aspects of running also, like which may be technical, which are important to consider? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, so heart rate is one of the key elements because heart rate tells you in which zones to run, and heart rate can be applied over all the runs. Apart from heart rate, there are also 3 other important aspects which any runner should understand. And why are they important? How do they help him become a better runner? So the first one is the VO2 max, the second is building your aerobic endurance, and the third is the lactate threshold.
Okay.
VO2 max, as the name suggests VO2 max. So it is essentially the amount of oxygen that the body can consume per milliliter per kilogram per minute.
Okay.
So essentially, if I were to put it in numbers, let's say a person has a VO2 max of 40, he weighs 60 kilos. So he can consume 40 into 60, 2400, and so 2400 liters, milliliters of oxygen in a minute.
Okay.
So his VO2 max thereby becomes 2400 divided by 60, which is equal to 40 milliliters per kilogram per minute. So any average male who is in the age group of 30 to 39 has a VO2 max of 35 to 40. What are the primary factors driving VO2 max is the gender, which is male and female, the age. As you grow, the VO2 max keep coming down, and the generic fitness levels. So these are the three factors. So
the higher it is, the better it is.
The higher it is, the better it is, and as your endurance levels and as your fitness levels keep increasing, your VO2 max keeps increasing.
Got it.
So for a 50th percentile in a male usually has around 35 to 40, whereas the 95th percentile guy has greater than 50 to 55 range. So that is.
पर ये क्या range होता है मतलब? Does it go to 100? Like क्या scene है?
So what has been observed is the cross country skiers has the highest VO2 max, and that goes as high as 90.
90?
90. Yeah, in male it goes as high as 90. The marathoners male marathoners has it around 80 to 85. The female marathoners has it around 75 to 80. So that is the maximal levels. So my VO2 max is 60 to 63.
Okay. Got it.
So that
So
is
this
the
like
VO2 max.
98 percentile.
Yeah, so I use Garmin device, and I have been in the 1% in the use of the users who use Garmin.
Okay.
So how can you improve your VO2 max? One of the key elements how to improve your VO2 max is incorporating your interval runs. Interval runs, as you push through the heart rates into your interval runs, your ability to pump the blood increases, and so your ability to consume oxygen improves. So, and also the next important run are the tempo runs, because you are able to maintain a steady tempo at a maximal heart rate. So your ability to consume oxygen from the air increases, and so thereby your VO2 max keeps increasing.
Okay.
So typically you can see a 10 to 15% VO2 max gains if you are consistent with your interval running and tempo runs over the 4 to 6 weeks period. So that is VO2 max. The second one is the aerobic endurance. We have talked about the hard runs and the slow runs. The slow runs, which are your easy runs, and the long runs, are the primary fuel to increase your aerobic endurance. One of the key drivers to sustain longer distances in endurance sports is increasing your aerobic capacity, because 99% of your time you are dependent on using oxygen as fuel to pump to send it to the muscle so that your energy production is continuous. So aerobic capacity improves a lot when you are running at easy runs at the desired heart rate.
And that's why aerobic is like zone 2 ko aerobic.
Correct. Zone 2 is aerobic. Okay. Anaerobic, on the other hand, is for short durations, and the primary importance of anaerobic is when you are able to push for those shorter distances. Let's say you are 800 meters stopping for those 1 minute and 30 seconds. That is where your anaerobic capacity increases. A combination of aerobic and anaerobic improvements gives you a greater cardiovascular system. So that is the importance of aerobic and the anaerobic capacity. And for aerobic capacity, it is all about running longer distances, running slower, keeping the feet on the ground, and just keep running.
तो जो long runs होते हैं and those easy runs जो हैं, they generally add up to how good you are doing in your aerobic
capacity, aerobic zones. Yeah. So typically when you are starting out for a beginner, his aerobic capacity is limited to running as low as 8 minutes per kilometer, but over time it comes down to 6, 5, 4:30 as well. Elites can run in aerobic zones at 4 minutes 30 seconds per kilometer as well.
Oh,
so to give perspective, essentially if your pace run is at X, 70% of that X should be your aerobic zones.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so that is something which a beginner can keep in mind. So if he is able to maintain a 5K pace at 6 minutes per kilometer, 70% of that, usually typically 8 minutes to 8 minutes 30 seconds per kilometer, is a good enough aerobic capacity which he can run. The third and the most important aspect is the lactate threshold.
Okay.
Lactate threshold is the amount of lactic acid which the body produces, expressed in millimoles per liter. Millimoles, by the definition, do not go by the definition, because a mole is 6.022 into 10 power 23 molecules of that lactic acid. So millimoles is 6.022 into 10 power 20. Okay. That has to be less than 2. Typically it is in the range of 1 millimoles per liter lactic acid. Then you are able to push continuously throughout your range. The moment it touches 2, then the body keeps producing lactic acid which the blood cannot flush out.
But why does this get produced?
It gets produced due to exercise. Whenever there is an exertion of energy, exertion of pressure, the lactic acid keeps producing. That keeps on flushing out. The body can flush out lactic acid as well. But if the lactic acid production reaches at a certain threshold, the blood cannot flush out, then you invariably slow. Why do beginners slow down? Or let's say why are you walking after a certain point in time? Is because your lactate thresholds are lower. So you are not able to sustain that pace for longer duration. So you are running fast, your lactate buildup has started, and then suddenly it goes down.
I actually remember this from my engineering days. I think also the basic way of producing energy is when you break down glucose. Obviously, oxygen becomes part of it. That's where I think VO2 max, all of those things combine. If that process is done right, then you produce energy. And if that process is not right, or insufficiency of oxygen can result in lactic acid formation.
Correct.
I think I was assuming both
Correct.
things are same.
Yes.
So if you're producing in excess of 1, reaching to 2, that is where your body is not allowing you to push continuously at the level you were trying to push at.
Correct.
I'm assuming I'm just making
Correct.
sense, right?
So one of the most key important aspects of understanding lactic acid and lactate thresholds comes in running 400 meters track distance.
Okay.
In short distance running, 400 meters track distance is considered to be the pinnacle of running, because your body starts producing lactic acid, and that is why you see lot of 400 meters runners struggling towards the end. So that is where your ability to maintain that lactic acid thresholds at that levels becomes that much more key and that much more important. So because it can go as high as 20, but the moment it goes up beyond 2, your body invariably slows down. So lactic acid plays a huge role in lot of marathoners slowing down during their early phases.
But ये measure कैसे होगा?
All these are measured in labs. VO2 max, lactic thresholds. There are techniques.
But I'm just thinking, if somebody is preparing for a marathon, it's good to know all of this. Matlab, how do you impact or control? First of all, measure, and then control them.
So VO2 max, for example, most of the devices which use
ठीक है,
has
VO2 max उसमें आ जाएगा. I understand कि aerobic anaerobic essentially is zone of heart rate.
Zone of heart
तो वो मतलब हार्ट रेट वाला ही डिस्कशन एक अलग तरीके से करने वाली बात है.
Correct.
बट ये लैक्टिक एसिड को कैसे मेजर करेगा?
So lactic acid can be measured in a lab, but for most of our amateur runners, lactic acid is unfortunately measured through experience.
Okay.
So for example, the best way to understand how lactic acid thresholds are built is start at the base of the hill, run for 300 meters at your full pace. You see at what point in time are you slowing down, where your lactate is building, and then do experimental analysis over the period of time. At the same pace, if you are able to keep on climbing for longer distances, your lactic acid production is going down. One more way of understanding lactic acid threshold is tempo runs. Tempo runs essentially are uncomfortable runs done for 30 to 45 minutes. So which essentially means your lactic acid production is at optimal levels that the body is able to flush it out. The moment you are slowing down, that means that the lactic acid production has increased. So you want to maintain, let's say, 5 minutes per kilometer for 30 minutes. You are not able to maintain beyond 22 minutes. That means that is where your fatigue is starting in, and then lactic acid production has started. Whereas you are reaching at 30 throughout the 30 minutes journey, you are uncomfortable but are able to complete it. That means that your lactic acid is constant. That gives you a push to improve it next time you get into a next tempo run. So your 5 minutes can be then brought down to 450 and see if you are able to maintain that.
Makes
So
sense.
those are experimental basis which can be used to understand that your lactic acid thresholds are improving.
Got it.
Okay.
So now, good. So now we have done till 21, somebody's prepared. And you said, look, 21 to 42 is not just basic math of multiplying it by 2. What are the new things which become part of your entire training? And I remember you saying that 21 ke liye you prepare for anywhere around 12 to 14 weeks. What's the optimum time to then prepare for, say, 42 distance? Assuming somebody's already run for 21 for, say, 5-6 times over a period of 2 years, what would say an ideal? So abhi maine if I've done the 6th marathon, 2 saal ho gaye, now I want to prepare for 42. Now what is it that somebody follows or should follow?
So for a 42 kilometers training, I'll break down the entire training cycle into 3 phases. So the first phase is the pre-marathon building phase, which lasts about 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Then there is a marathon building phase, which lasts till you finish the marathon, which is 16 to 18 weeks. 14 to 18 weeks, I would say. So 14 on the lower side and 18 on the higher side. And then the post-marathon recovery. All these 3 blocks are equally important when you are running a marathon.
Okay.
First, we'll talk about the base building phase. The base building phase is where you are able to put together all the half marathon training into a perspective where this is where I stand, this is where my half marathon pace is, this is where my VO2 max is, this is how much fast I can run my interval running. At this phase, you are focusing primarily on strength training. So you cut down on the running mileage. Let's say typically the base building phase starts during your during your summer season in India. Because let's say you are trying for a marathon in November, your base building phase starts in around April and May, 4 to 6 weeks. You are running as low as 25 to 30 kilometers, 2 runs, 3 runs a week, but you are incorporating 2 to 3 strength trainings per week.
So a lot of strength training.
Lot of strength training, lot of core exercises,
Okay.
less of mileage.
Okay.
So that you are preparing your muscles for what is to come for your 42 training.
So this is give or take like 6 weeks.
6 weeks, yes, 6 weeks. So you are focusing on your large muscle groups, on your small muscle groups, upper body, lower body, core strength, everything. Okay, that is your building blocks. Then comes the 14 to 18 weeks training program. So I'll break that into 4 blocks again, which is your week 1 to week 4, week 4 to week 8, 9 to 12, and 13 to 16. The first to fourth is the primary test phase, where you are still continuing with the strength training, but you are just increasing the running mileages.
Okay.
Okay. So essentially, when I'm talking about running mileages, I'll give a weekly schedule. Typically, it lasts from 50 kilometers to 60 kilometers per week in your week 1 to week 4. Okay. So your long runs are about 18 to 22 kilometers, and the rest of the runs are in and around 25 to 30 kilometers. You have your easy runs, you have your long runs. In between, you are trying to incorporate one easy run or
The
one
hard
pace
runs.
run, the hard runs. Okay. And the strength training sessions and the core sessions are 1 each. So this is your week 1 to week 4. Week 4 to week 8 is the build phase, where for the first time you are reaching a 32 kilometer, the 30 plus so called, the mileage in the long run distance. Okay. And you are incorporating one extra run into your schedule.
Okay.
So your 50 to 60 becomes 60 to 70 kilometers per week
Okay.
with that extra run. If you can still continue with the exact strength training and core exercises by adding a core session in the evening, nothing like it. But having said that, if you cannot do that, you'll cut down on that. But you'll have one strength training definitely. And then comes the 9 to 12 weeks phase, which is where the maximal load happens.
Okay.
So here you are going to do at least 2 to 3 30 plus kilometer runs in the long run.
Okay.
During that phase, okay, and you're anywhere running around 75 to 85 kilometers
Every week,
okay, and your interval runs become faster, your tempo runs are taken to levels where you are able to maintain the tempo at your maximal pace, and you have something known as a tune-up race or a time trial.
Okay.
What is a tune-up race or a time trial is essentially you have a certain target for marathon. You have done a half marathon 6 months ago. Now you want to see whether or not you are that half marathon pace or you are at the 10K pace. So you do a time trial, which essentially means that you do a 10K at full pace or you do a half marathon by registering for a race, so that you understand your fitness levels to reach there. Once you understand that you are able to do, let's say, a half marathon at 6 minutes per kilometer, you can safely assume that you will be able to do, considering the other physiological aspects, you can run a full marathon at 6 minutes 20 seconds to 6 minutes 30 seconds per kilometer. That helps, and also your aerobic capacity is increasing as you move along into 30 plus runs. That's the core section. Okay, and then comes the 13 to 16 kilometer week, where what you call it as tapering phase, where you are slowing down your mileage, cutting down your mileage, slowing down your runs, add another core session and strength session back like into the first week one, and bring down your mileage to 55 to 65 kilometers.
So your tapering will look like the
Week 1 to
week one. So matlab, you're increasing it.
Correct.
Chota hai, then you're increasing
Correct.
it, then really taking it up, and then suddenly tapering it down.
Correct.
I'm assuming tapering is just done just before the marathon.
2 weeks. So 2 weeks before is the full phase tapering. For so, like for example, the 15th and the 16th weeks are where you actually completely taper down. So 16th kilometer is 16th week into the marathon is where you just run one run. That's about it.
And generally end of 16th week is like your
is
marathon.
The race. Is the race.
Got it.
Okay. So you run two runs. You are not doing your strength training. You are just letting the body relax. Okay. So that is your week 16th. Week 15th is where again you are slowing down in your mileage. So overall, if you see, you're talking about 50 to 60, building all the way to 75 to 85, and then bringing down to 50 to 60. If you do the math, you're talking anywhere close to 1000 to 1200 kilometers building into your marathon cycle.
Okay, got it. That's why you said initially that ideally if you were doing it again,
correct,
instead of 700 kilometers over 18 months, you would do it over 18 weeks, 1200 kilometers.
Correct. 1200 kilometers.
This is crazy difference to what you should have done.
Correct.
But now you know you could have done this.
Correct. Correct.
And so one quick question which was just crossing my mind while all of this is happening, and by the way, just for the audience, obviously I know that you're a vegetarian. Now there is a lot of muscle we spoke about, and generally muscle regeneration, there's protein requirements, like the diet has to be different. How do you see diets changing and things to be considered when you are trying to probably section A build for 5-10 kilometers, then section B for 21, and then section C for 42? How do you think about that? Do you make some changes?
Yeah.
Because I'm hoping कि 5-10 तो यार आप normal basic अच्छा खाना खाते हो, not eating fast foods वगैरह ये वो, your body will get to a level where you can easily do 5-10 with all exercise and all the regime you talk about. But I'm sure 10 to 21 is a different jump and 21 to 42 is a different jump.
Correct.
And generally, ठीक है, first इस पे बात करते हैं because I would always also want to understand pre-race, during race and post-race what should you eat.
Correct.
But generally prep phase में how do you think about it?
Okay. So I'll take a little step back because you also touch based on one very important aspect as to 21 to 42 and why is that 21 to 42 important in terms of health and nutrition.
Yeah.
Okay. So how is my body able to run? My only source, not my only source, my primary source of energy while running is glycogen, which is the glucose. So the glucose stored in the body is in the form of glycogen. And human bodies typically have 500 grams to 600 grams of glycogen stored.
Okay.
The 500 grams of glycogen stored is in the skeletal muscles. That is why your skeletal muscle mass is important, because then the ability to store glycogen becomes higher, and the remaining 100 grams is stored in liver.
Okay.
Okay. So there is only certain amount which the body can store as glycogen. As an evolutionary process, anything over and above this, our body converts it into fat.
तो एक्स्ट्रा खाना खाओगे कार्ब्स तो फिर वो मोटे हो जाओगे. सिंपल बात.
आप प्रोटीन भी खा लो. आप 100 ग्राम्स का प्रोटीन भी एक्स्ट्रा खा लो, that will eventually turn into fat only. Your body cannot have any other forms of storage apart from fat.
True.
There are correct. So now you have only 600 grams.
Fat is like FD.
Fat is like
sweep in sweep out हो जाएगा account.
Correct. So, and primarily your fat stores here from belly and then goes up. So when you are losing fat, that's why your face becomes thinner, and then eventually the stubborn fat which is in the fat goes towards the end. Yeah. So you have 600 grams of glycogen. 600 grams of glycogen translates into 2400 kilocalories. Every carbohydrate has 4 calories. So you have 2400 kilocalories. Typical marathon running distance requires 3000 to 3200 kilocalories.
Okay.
So which essentially means that your energy levels which are stored in your body are not sufficient to run your 42 kilometers.
So you will have to keep eating or doing something.
That means you are dependent on your external sources to fuel during the race. So you are running, you are fueling, your body has to digest and give you glucose, and still you should be able to run.
Got it.
That is why physiologically a 21 to 42 is very, very challenging.
Okay. Because 21 still allows you?
21 allows you to have your glycogen levels which is stored, so you can run.
Okay, got it.
Anything beyond 42 is exactly similar thing. You are essentially consuming. It's just that what are you consuming and when are you consuming becomes important. Ultra distances they can also consume fat, whereas here to consume fat, it requires more time, so you slow down. People can run marathon without consuming anything, because you can ask Prudhvi then, in case if people don't run, can they finish 42, because people have been finishing 42. The answer is yes, but then body should then move into secondary fuel source, which is your fat, but conversion from fat takes time.
True.
So that is why when you are running, you require forms of carbohydrates which you need to consume. So the better evolution of marathon running led us to now lot of gels, dates and all of these, which gives you on the go energy, which can get converted into glucose very fast and then give you energy so that you can keep running. So that is on the physiological aspects of 42, and that is why a 42 cycle, when you are running 42, so when you are running 21, you can always run beyond 21 also in your practice runs. If you are a good fast runner, I would suggest them to go ahead and run 25 kilometers as well as your practice runs. It is fine. Whereas when you are preparing for a 42, you will never run a distance of 42. Even the elites, when they are preparing, who can run a marathon distance in 2 hours to 2 hours 5 minutes, will still run the longest at 40. Whereas for amateurs like us, we run something close to 32 to 35. Because we do not want to get into the danger zone of completely going out of glycogen. But
you could use the gels on your run also, no?
Yeah. But still, when you are doing that, you would still want to incorporate intake of glycogen, which is in the form of gels, so that you are able to understand how the body is able to absorb the glycogen.
Okay, got it.
But still not go to levels where it will be completely empty.
मतलब ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि वो बॉडी उसी समय डिस्कवर कर रही है कि इसको कैसे डाइजेस्ट.
करेक्ट.
जनरली जब हम ये हेल्थ एंड न्यूट्रिशन की बात कर रहे हैं, ऑब्वियसली ये तो एक पार्ट हो गया कि देयर इज अ बिग जंप फ्रॉम 21 to 42. समबडी do not have the energy stored in the body to actually go ahead and completely do 42 on their own. I'm hoping 21 में भी लोग लेते ही हैं, because nobody would want to get to depleting levels. But my initial question was more about कि generally जब हम अपने nutrition का ध्यान देते हैं, anyway we know that we shouldn't be eating a lot of fried, all of that, and protein is a big factor. I know people talk about कि भाई vegan भी कर सकते हैं, the way to go, but vegetarian food. And मैं Indian context में पूछना चाह रहा हूँ, because बहुत सारे YouTube वीडियोस में हम बहुत वेस्टर्नाइज्ड वर्जन ऑफ न्यूट्रिशन देखते हैं. कि भाई कुछ कुछ चीज़ें हम ऐसी खाते हैं जो हम लोग नहीं खाते, इंडियनाइज्ड वर्जन में लोग बात नहीं कर पाते हैं, एंड दैट टू गिवन दैट अ लॉट ऑफ अस आर वेजिटेरियन, how should the nutrition be taken care of while you're preparing in those sections of 5 to 10 kilometers वाला मतलब length, and then 21 के लिए जब आप prepare कर रहे हो 42 के लिए, if you could speak about that.
Yeah. So when it comes to health and nutrition in general, okay, distances have a smaller role to play, except during the build up to the race day or the pre-race nutrition. All 5 kilometers all the way upwards to 42 kilometers typically have a similar
Okay,
weight.
okay, got it.
So
Great.
there is no difference. It's, and lot of guys complicate it because they want to promote their products deep down. Okay, at the end of the day, when it comes to nutrition, it is all about simplification. Okay, I mean, nutrition in itself is a big topic. We can talk about hours on that, but to keep it simple, it is about the number of calories which you are intaking per day as against the calories which you are expending per day. That's it. So for a 5 kilometer distance, you may be only expending additional 300 to 400 calories than your resting calories during
Okay.
your training cycle.
Got it.
Whereas you are expending anywhere close to 1000 to 1500 calories during your long runs. So you will have to fuel that much more post or before your long runs. But the fundamental concept remains the same. And so as far as nutrition goes, there are three fundamental sources of nutrition: carbohydrates, proteins and fats, the macronutrients, and then the micronutrients. So macronutrients, sources of macronutrients are more or less the same in vegetarian food and non-vegetarian food, except the fact that the ability of the body to process non-vegetarian food to generate amino acids is faster as compared to a vegetarian diet. That is the fundamental difference. But having said that, if you are able to have a complete vegetarian meal which includes lentils, carbohydrates and enough amounts of fat in terms of curd, good oil content with less surf oil, homemade cooking, homemade oil, then there is no difference as to how you are able to generate your energy through vegetarian diet or non-vegetarian diet.
Okay.
Typically for a 65 kilogram male, you are talking about anywhere close to 2000 kilocalories per day during his resting phase. Add another 400 to 500 kilocalories with the exercise, you are talking about 2400 to 2500 kilocalories. The way I would break it down about the consumption is depending on the amount of frequency with which you want to eat and the number, which essentially means the number of times in a day you would want to eat, because somebody wants to have only 3 meals per day, somebody wants to have as many as 6 meals per day. So the breakfast section, which is your pre-run section, and the immediate post-run section are the most critical aspects when it comes to running.
And also you're training in the mornings for any weight.
Correct, because you are expending more energy. So it is imperative that you also fuel your body pre and post your runs. There are also a lot of science which talks about running on empty stomach. That is also well proven for a lot of people. If it works for you, go ahead. But in case if you want something to eat, have one banana which gives you around 80 to 90 kilocalories, and then proceed to run. Come back from running, take protein intake. Your protein intake, if you are a vegetarian, can be sattu. Okay, sattu is coming out to be one of the better sources of protein in the recent past, which gives you almost as equivalent as your protein powder, or eggs, omelets, boiled eggs. Then sprouts is a good option. Okay, so these are Indian foods which gives you good and adequate
और
protein.
दाल तो है ही ना, मतलब दाल is
Correct,
one thing
which is dal typically you eat during lunch.
True,
I'm
true.
talking about the morning
Pre and
breakfast,
post
pre
of.
and post section. Okay, combine it with Indian breads. Our vegetarian system is such that we are adequately fuel for carbohydrates and fats. You talk about upma, dosa, idli, any dhokla, any typical Indian foods which are less oily, has enough and more carbohydrates to
True.
to
तो ऑयल,
sufficiently take.
तो मतलब ऑयल स्किप करो एंड दाल खाओ
No. So
एंड
yes, for
एंड
breakfast, yes.
हाँ मतलब इफ यू कैन तो नथिंग लाइक इट.
Correct. But for lunch, use good oil. Use groundnut oil. Use original sources of oil. Cook in homemade cooking oil. They are equally good because they give you good sources of protein. Peanut butter, if you can incorporate, they are good sources of fats. Good fats are equally important because they give you more energy through lesser consumptions. Okay. So for lunch, you stick to your roti, the sabji. So that is
Normal.
sufficient. Okay. Normal diets. Normal diet. Only sources of micronutrients are some things which we may have to depend on is in terms of omega fatty acids, which comes through walnuts and some bit of dry fruits.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
something which the body cannot produce. If you are a vegetarian, if you are a non-vegetarian, fish gives you good amount of omega fatty acids. So that is something which you need to incorporate into your diet, so that, and then have early dinner, if preferably 2 hours before you sleep, if you can finish your dinner, so that the body has got enough time to digest what is being consumed. That is sufficient.
Why I'm thinking is because I was just anticipating that it might be different. But what you're essentially saying is veg, non-veg doesn't matter. Just eat right, eat at the right time, sleep on time, and eat your dinner 2 hours before. जो general हमारे health conditions हैं. I think it becomes more health, nutrition becomes more important from a context of run. तो जिस दिन फॉर एग्जांपल लॉन्ग रन है या मैराथन है या एक रेस है, उसका जस्ट प्री, ड्यूरिंग एंड पोस्ट बिकम्स वेरी ट्रिकी. बट व्हेन यू बिल्डिंग अप फॉर इट, then it could be just basic healthy food which you and your family or your, your home, your house is used to eat.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct. So, one of the most important quotes which I always think about when it comes to running is, you started running, most of us started running to stay healthy. As you transition into a good runner, okay, you stay healthy to ensure running.
Okay, good.
Okay, so that is where the transition happens. So as you're transitioning, you want to stay healthy so that your running is not impacted.
दिस इज ट्रू. मैं बहुत बेसिक रन करता हूँ, पर जब मैं रन भी कर रहा होता हूँ, आई डोंट नाउ थिंक ऑफ ईटिंग राइट फ्रॉम अ कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ कि अरे मैं मोटा हो रहा हूँ या नहीं. ऑल्दो आई वुड लव टू look good to myself, although my wife is a big motivator कि भाई तुम मोटे हो रहे हो. But I think the other thing is while I'm running also I'm thinking यार अब वो नहीं खाऊंगा, नेक्स्ट टाइम मेरा रन बेटर होगा. मतलब अपने आप मेरे दिमाग में ये भी चलता है. सॉरी, you're right.
Correct.
But good यार. एक तो one more thing which I was thinking is, although we spoke about your journey 2016, 17, 18, how you ran, a lot of things you did bad, but let's also talk about a lot of things you've done really, really, really well. I think while we were speaking and researching, also we figured that less than 1 or 2% of all runners, uh, professionals aside, generally do not cross, like cannot do a full marathon in under 3 hours. Your best time is like 2 hours 58 minutes, if I'm not wrong.
Correct.
And you've done like sub 3 marathons. This is what we call it. Twice already.
Yeah.
How many marathons have you run until now, like, completely?
So I have run close to 8 marathons to
Okay.
date.
Okay.
So as I said, 2018 was my first marathon.
उसका क्या timing था which you struggled through and did every wrong horrible thing you should do as a runner? उसका क्या timing था?
So I finished my first marathon, the 2018 marathon, in 4 hours and 26 minutes.
तो 26 minutes से off हो गए.
Correct.
है ना?
So 26 minutes off. So then so as I was saying earlier, then I took up coaching, and then 2019 was my second marathon where I ran in 4 hours and 1 minute. So I was flying for that for 1 minute mark, but then I could not. But I was happy that I was able to shave off 25 minutes.
Yep.
Then the third marathon, which to date is the most memorable marathon which I have run, is the Ladakh marathon.
Oh, nice.
So that marathon is considered to be one of the toughest.
low oxygen
low
levels.
oxygen levels at a very high altitude levels. You are running, the minimum altitude is at 11,000 feet, and then you are running throughout. And then that I have run in 4 hours and 56 minutes. But
456 is like sub 4.
yeah, is easily a sub 4 marathon, because immediately after that is when I have realized how the way we were talking about how the body tells you that you need to stop, the body also gives you signal when you can push. But I'll give you an anecdote. I came back from Ladakh marathon in September 2019.
Okay.
Then you had a 2 to 3 weeks of off period post marathons,
Like a recovery.
the recovery phase, and then you kickstart your next phase. So then I registered for 2020 Tata Marathon again. So as the base building phase, I was running, and then one of the fellow runners just said, "You are running slow. I guess you can do better than that." And that was a hill run. And then all of a sudden I ran. Trust you me, I was struggling to reach under 4, which translates into 5 minutes and 45 seconds per kilometer.
Give or take. Yeah.
Give or take, give or take. I transitioned into a 5 minutes per kilometer runner immediately.
Okay.
I mean, that is how your body can transform with continual amounts of running, and that is one of the key triggers for me was the Ladakh marathon, how it transitioned me there. So from 2019 to 2020, I moved from a 401 runner to a 331 runner, 3 hours and 31 minutes. I shaved off 30 minutes.
So Ladakh happened in September 19.
September 19,
And in January 20 when you ran,
I ran.
you could improve like by 30 minutes.
From 2019, I ran a 4 hours and 1 minute. Even a like-to-like comparison, you're talking about 4 hours and 1 minute to 3 hours and 31 minutes. So that is a huge jump. So a lot of things had to go right for me as well in my journey.
But यार एक बात बताओ, when you ran, by the way, just going back to Ladakh run, a lot of people I know for a fact, जब हम Olympics भी देखते हैं, Olympics are about to come. A lot of people who are into track and field generally go to higher altitudes and practice because lower oxygen levels में practice करते हो ताकि जो sea level या कम altitude level पे wherever games are happening, generally lower level sea levels पे होते हैं, as in like closer to sea levels, you will be able to perform better. But just the inverse is also true कि जब आप बॉम्बे में रह रहे हो, which is sea level only, and then you suddenly go to 11,000 feet, it becomes really challenging. Obviously, that translates into you being really happy about 4 hours 56 minutes. How difficult it is to transition and then start running it? Like, kitne din pehle you went to Ladakh and then I'm sure you did practice runs there. I don't know. Like, how was the experience of going from a sea level place to Ladakh and then running?
Yeah, very, very important point. So there are two ways to reach Ladakh. The best way is to travel by road so that you keep acclimatizing as you move along.
True.
But unfortunately, our professional jobs do not give you that time. So, but the minimum time when a person has to reach Ladakh is at least 7 to 10 days before the race starts. So for the marathon that happens on the second week of September, we reached on the Sunday of first week of September. So the first day we do not do anything, you just stay put. The second day we just went for a walk and tried to run. And I'm talking about walking with a slow jog pace, which is essentially 10 minutes per kilometer for 3 kilometers. And by the end of those 3 kilometers, you're struggling to breathe. That was on Monday. And then you add 2 more runs, which is towards Wednesday and Thursday. By the end of Thursday, your body has just been enough to just come to 8 minutes to 9 minutes per kilometer. And our human bodies are so profound, they perform miracles so much so that by the end of the marathon eve, your body is ready to at least run at 7 minutes per kilometer for a distance of 42 kilometers. Whereas on the first day, you're struggling to run for 3 kilometers at 10 minutes per kilometer.
And 7 for a person who generally runs at 5:30.
Correct. So 7 is just a number. So essentially, you're talking about 80% of your
हाँ, वही
running
मैं सोच
capacity.
रहा था
It's
कि
80% of your running
80% of your capability you are able to achieve within say 10 days.
Correct.
7 to 10 days.
7 to 10 days.
Awesome. So ये एक हुआ and then next year Tata हुआ,
Correct.
which was 330.
330.
That was like a very, very big jump.
Correct.
It's not 30 minutes, but 30 minutes getting shaved off when you're anyway running faster
Correct.
than most of people.
Correct.
And then what happened?
And
This is
then
4.
COVID hit, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
you are struggling to get your training cycles going on. But I still wanted to continue and then get into one run at least, so one marathon per year phase. So where in 2021 I ran the Bangalore marathon, but just before the marathon I had an ankle injury.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to struggle, and then so I did finish the marathon, but I ran at 3 hours and 24 minutes. That was my fourth. And then 2022 was the next jump for me.
Okay.
So COVID was still there, but by then the curbs were not there. So, and 2022 March it was in Jaipur. Okay. I had originally registered for Delhi, but then the Delhi marathon got postponed due to COVID-3, and we did not know the dates. So, and when Jaipur announced their dates, we quickly registered, and then I ran my 5th marathon over there. From a 324 marathoner, I transitioned to a 3 hours and 3 minutes marathoner.
No, so 331 in
2020 to 324 in 2021, I transitioned to a 3 hours and 3 minutes marathoner.
ये change कैसे हुआ?
This is when the science of running helped me. All the science which I talked about in terms of incorporating resting heart rate, slow runs, threshold runs, all of this happened during this phase.
So you went from 324 to 303.
303. So that was my.
This was your 6th marathon.
This was my 5th or 6th marathon.
Sixth, nah?
Sixth
marathon.
Yeah.
And then the 7th and the 8th were sub 3.
No, 7th was again a 303 marathon. That was my first international marathon, Amsterdam Marathon.
Oh, nice.
So
how was the experience of running? Like, how is it different from India?
So the Jaipur Marathon, which I ran in March, started at 3 a.m. in the morning.
It started at 3
a.m. in the morning because obviously
बंदा सोएगा कब उठेगा कब क्या सीन है?
So I got up at 1:30 in the morning.
But you must have slept at what?
8:30.
7, 8:30. Like 8:30 भी.
Whatever little sleep you can get. That's
crazy, yeah. And then, so you were saying.
So I started at 3 a.m. in the morning, whereas the Amsterdam Marathon I started at 9 a.m. in the morning.
Okay.
So running in India, we are used to running at certain temperatures and certain climatic conditions. For a runner who is typically running it around 3 hours to 3 hours 30 minutes, by the time the sun is rising, you are finishing your marathon.
Right.
Because the average time, marathon time in India is typically 4 hours and 45 minutes to anywhere close to 6 hours. So now you're talking about 6 hours runner finishing, it starts at 5 a.m., then you're talking about 11 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
So whereas we are finishing at 8 a.m. in the morning, whereas in Jaipur it started at 3 a.m. because it was already March, 14th of March.
Okay.
So talking about Jaipur climate at if you want to run at 9 a.m. in the morning, you're talking about peak sun already.
Right, got it.
So that is why they started at 3 a.m. in the morning. I finished at 6 a.m. 6:03. Here I'm starting at 9 a.m. in the morning with full sunlight, and the sun is rising and peaking. So when we started, the temperatures were 5 to 7 degrees.
Okay.
So I did not have any sleeves. I was not wearing any jacket. I was wearing, typically we go in half sleeves. So it was cold. We were put up there waiting for half an hour to 45 minutes. The body is not warmed up. And then you started running. I was in such a good rhythm that at some point in time, when one of the guys asked me, you should continue running without stopping. One more important thing here. In Indian running, we get water bottles where you can pick while running, consume water and then throw the water bottle. Whereas in international marathons, they do not allow plastic bottles. You'll have to consume water in paper cups. Paper cups. So either you'll have to understand the art of holding the paper cups and drinking, which obviously I did not know. So I was stopping, drinking and going. And in India, you are used to taking water every 3 to 4 kilometers because every 2 kilometers you have a water station, considering the tropical climates. Whereas there, the water stations come only 5 to 6 kilometers once. Though physiologically we can run, but mind is attuned to running at 3 to 4, taking water intake at 3 to 4 kilometers. So you are struggling to get to water station, and then when you are stopping there and trying to drink water, the water is cold. You are not used to drinking cold water. So you are drinking cold water, stopping, And then when one guy asked, so still I was well within the cutoff time to reach under 3. But when one of the organizers asked, why are you stopping? I said that I have a goal in mind. I am still stopping. So I can stop and still continue the run. I will be there. Come 35-kilometer mark, when the sun rose and then it was right above the head, then something triggered and then I started hallucinating. It was very difficult. It was one of the toughest runs to finish. If you see the end part of my Amsterdam marathons, I was practically dead walking to the finish line. I did finish in 3 hours and 3 minutes.
Still completing in 3:03.
That is because the last 2 to 3 kilometers I was running at 5 minutes and 30 seconds per kilometer, still ending it up there. So I was well within the under 3 mark. So that was the sixth or the 7th marathon there. So 2022. Typically 2022 is when I had 3 hours and 3 minutes. So you have faster improvements, and then came the phase where immediately after the Amsterdam marathon, I had a huge injury in terms of calf injury. So so I had registered for 2023 Delhi, where I wanted to attempt one more full marathon, but I had a huge injury. I had to completely go off training again for the next 5 to 6 months.
But do marathoners also have so many injuries? Like it seems like every 18 to 24 months you get injured. Obviously, I don't wish that for you, but I'm just like कि अच्छा अभी रन करके जैसे ही इम्प्रूव किया फिर इंजरी, फिर कुछ इम्प्रूव किया फिर इंजरी. So, like most people go through this grind of getting injured again and again, or like were you specially unfortunate in your
So
attempts?
injuries are inevitable. The best of amateurs or professional runners get injured. Okay, I mean, I know for a fact that one of the most famous guys in India who runs barefoot, known as Barefoot Bobby.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, so he's considered to be the epitome of barefoot running. He used to run so smoothly. Suddenly, all of a sudden, his knee gave up and he had to get operated. So injuries exist. That is one of the biggest things which I keep telling beginners as well as established athletes, that they come unannounced. Do not lose hope during the injury phase, because it is very tough. It gets really frustrating because you are almost there. I was there, and then comes the injury, because I was so much good at that phase that I went to Ahmedabad just to cheer for my friends, and then suddenly on the day of the race they said that you run now, and I was able to run a full marathon in 1 hour and 24 minutes.
Half marathon.
Half marathon. Half marathon in 1 hour and 24 minutes. I was that strong. Unannounced, the injury comes, and then your 6 months are out. The most frustrating phase. So thankfully, strength training helped, the physios helped, the entire infrastructure around me, the group who are there around me kept on motivating me.
If I am right, you have a very strong group of friends based out of Bombay. Like you go to Juhu,
Correct.
there's a big group of runners. I think you guys are like 20, 30 of you who run together.
Correct.
That helps. Like
so I'll talk about the group running a little here. A group definitely helps to keep you motivated, and a group definitely helps during your low phase of your life. Because I mean, during my first low phase of my life, there was nobody except very few close friends, Pushpa being one of them, who kept on encouraging me, because the entire office was against me to run in the first place and then get injured, and then me limping with one leg did not help the cause for the next 3 months. Whereas in the second phase, the similar phase, I had the entire ecosystem in place. I had a physio, I had a group of 10 to 12 people who were telling when to stop, helping you recover, helping you encourage you. That helps. The Amsterdam run where we went was in the group. That helps because you are also seeing your runners who are there together. One thing which I tell runners, especially people who are running in groups, is that running is an individual sport. Do not do all runs with the group. Your hard runs have to be done individually. If you are not pushing in your hard runs, the benefits of the group running is not being met. you are slowing yourself down, you are not pushing to the potential. That is one aspect which I tell a lot of people who are in running in groups, that run your easy runs. The fastest guy can run with the slowest person in easy runs, but a fastest guy has to run to his potential in group runs.
Makes sense.
That is important. That is the only aspect which I would want that.
हाँ मतलब जब ग्रुप में कर रहे हो तो ग्रुप एस्पेक्ट से आप इजी रन करो.
Correct.
But hard runs are for your own benefit.
Correct.
When it's for your own benefit, your 170, 180 BPM
Correct.
might be at a very different pace than somebody else's in your own group.
Correct.
If you're running with them, like the paces will be different. That's why you have to make it really an individual run that time.
Correct.
So I think matlab, that's why you guys now it makes sense. That's why you guys used to go for your long runs together a lot of times. But wo interval, tempo and all of those are something you guys do individually at your own convenience जहाँ पे भी run करते हैं.
Correct.
Makes
Because
sense.
that is important. That becomes very important. So coming back to the marathon journey, so 2023, once I started, I ran the Satara Marathon, which is the half marathon, but it has 470 meters of elevation. I mean, in terms of elevation, it is one of the toughest marathons, because you are talking about running all the way from base to 10.5 kilometers one way up and then coming down.
Oh, it's a hill run.
It's a hill run. It's a
So
continuous hill
So
run.
you start in the city of Satara.
Correct.
And then there is a hill nearby, so you go till the top, and then you take a U-turn and come back. If I'm not wrong.
Correct.
So the first half is all about
Climbing
upward
up.
climbing, and then second half is descent.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct. So that run I ran in 1 hour and 30 minutes, which was a huge kick boost, because I ran my fastest 5K, 10K in that race. So after the injury, the first race I ran with an 8-month gap was the Satara run. It's a half marathon, but it is important in the context that that was one of the biggest self-confidence. I mean, it brought the self-confidence back in me. It's a hill run where you start in the city of Satara and then you go up and then come back. I finished that in 1 hour and 30 minutes.
1 hour 30, and this is like a half marathon.
This is a half marathon.
So like what, 10.5 kilometers
Correct.
up and then
10.5 kilometers down. Okay. And I finished 4th in my age group coming back from an injury. That is one of the toughest marathons and then I could finish in 1 hour and 30 minutes. By then in the professional setup, I had transitioned into a different team. So all this while I had a cushion of being there in a settled team, whereas from here on the workload has increased and then you're transitioning into a team with very little prior knowledge of it. And then I had registered for Ahmedabad full marathon this time. That was in November. Why I'm stressing on this topic is that all this while I was chasing one goal, which is to run a marathon in under 3 hours. I was so close, I got injured. Then I had to come off the blocks and then run one half marathon. When I was ready, the entire professional load took over, that it was getting very difficult to balance the marathon training and the workloads. So it was so nervy phase that all the while the efforts which I had put in, I was not sure how it is going to translate. But the journey of fitness takes you to levels where even if you are able to work at office, the fitness levels which you have brought over a period of time can compensate you, because Adani Marathon is my first sub-3 marathon. 25 kilometers into the race, I knew that I was going to be sub-3. It is
nice.
all about maintaining it then. It's about not ruining it. And I had Amsterdam, which rhymes with Ahmedabad almost, except that both are two different cultures where wine flows in one city and then you don't have wine somewhere. But having said that, I had the experience of how it can fall out. But I had the Indian conditions that are helping me, and I had the self-confidence to just continue. I took it easy and then I finished it in 2 hours and 58 minutes.
But is this the marathon you're most proud about? Or
so, in terms of taking pride, I still rate Ladakh as my first most proud moment, because of how I felt once I landed to how I finished Ladakh, because that was one of the good marathons I finished. The second best is always the first marathon. Though I finished with no legs,
Uh.
that is still the second best. And then comes Adani.
So now that you've done sub 3, uh, like how does one stay motivated? Next kya karna hai? Like you keep running. Like probably if, I might be able to understand if I run marathons and that too 8 of them. But how does one stay motivated uh, for whatever you are deciding to achieve in the next say 5 6 years? What's next and how do you stay motivated?
So see, that's the beauty of running and the event calendar, which gives you a blueprint. If you ask me 5 years down the line what I'll do in professional life, I have no clue. But if you ask me what do I do next 5 years, uh, touch wood with a physiological state which I am in right now, I have a clear blueprint.
Okay.
I know that I have 6 world majors to conquer. I have to transition into ultra marathons, Comrades being the first, Khadungla being the next. And I want to run a lot of marathons which are very scenic across India. Lot of people uh, overlay that, but there are a lot of good marathons across India. So I have at least 12 to 15 marathons which I can run over the next 6 to 7 year cycle and still not be exhausted with the list.
वो 6 तो majors हैं.
Correct.
I think 3 of them are in US.
Correct.
Boston, New York, Chicago.
Correct.
And then you have London, Berlin and Tokyo.
Tokyo.
है ना?
Correct.
And if I'm not wrong, you're going to Berlin this year?
Yeah, I'll be attempting
So
Berlin in September.
You'll be attempting your first world major this year.
Correct. Correct.
उसमें भी तो कुछ कट ऑफ होगा ना. जब इंडिया में हमारे 15,000 लोगों में कट ऑफ हो रहा है, वहाँ 50,000 वालों तो और मेजर कट ऑफ होगा.
हाँ, so all the world majors have cutoffs.
अच्छा, okay, all of them.
All the world majors have cutoffs, but the difference between Boston Marathon and other marathons is that in Boston they give lot of importance to cutoff, whereas in other marathons they give importance to many other parameters. For example, in Berlin the cutoff time for you for an automatic entry for male is 2 hours and 45 minutes, where I am not there, so I am going
2 hours 45 minutes for a full marathon.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
मतलब if you're really an elite runner, तब आप आ जाओ.
Correct.
Otherwise, there must be some other way to do it.
And also there are commercial elements added to it. So London Marathon and Tokyo Marathon do not directly take any cutoff timings. So you'll have to go through tours and tour operators only.
Achha.
Okay. Whereas Berlin, why was my sub 3 important is also that with sub 3 in Adani followed by the Delhi Marathon, I am also qualified for Boston Marathon, which is considered as the pinnacle of amateur racing. It's like entry into Olympics for an amateur runner.
अच्छा, okay.
So
Boston आप qualify कर रहे हो, मतलब उससे ऊपर कुछ नहीं है.
It's famously called as BQ'd in running parlance.
BQ'd?
BQ is Boston qualified.
अच्छा, oh.
BQ'd.
So you have BQ'd.
So I have BQ'd.
Nice.
So.
And India में, sorry, just to come back to this point कि India, so these are 6. India में you said you would love to run. Which are like the top marathons in India? Like obviously Tata is something, Delhi, Bombay we know.
Correct.
Assuming Bangalore is one of them.
Correct.
You said Hyderabad you had gone to.
Hyderabad is one of the toughest races to run in India because of the headwinds and the elevation gains which are there.
So you've done Bombay, Delhi,
Bangalore,
Hyderabad.
No, Jaipur.
Jaipur you've done. Ahmedabad also.
Ahmedabad I have done and Ladakh I have done.
Oh, Ladakh you've done.
So I've covered the along the western.
Are these like the major ones in Indian circuit?
Yeah, Hyderabad is also there.
Okay.
Hyderabad is one of the better runs, and then Pune has very good runs. Okay. So these two.
And the scenic ones like?
And so the scenic ones involve Ladakh.
Ladakh one for sure.
Ladakh and Ladakh also has Khadungla race, which is a 72 kilometers ultra race, which starts on Friday at 3 a.m. in the morning, and you have a 14-hour cutoff. You have to reach Ladakh city by 5 p.m. in the morning.
Next morning, 5 p.m.
Okay. It's just 72 kilometers, but then you're starting at 14,000 feet, going up all the way
to 19,000. Just 72. मतलब just 72 kilometers. 7.2 में काफी दिक्कत हो जाएगी.
I meant 72 kilometers in 14 hours.
That makes sense.
But you're starting at 15,000 feet, going up all the way to 19,000 feet, and coming down to 11,000 feet.
Got it.
So they have added one more in Arunachal Pradesh, the Tawang Marathon, which is also very, very scenic. Sikkim Marathon happens in May, which is very scenic. There are a lot of trail marathons, which is in Malnad Ultra in Karnataka, the Goa River Marathon. There is Hampi Marathon, which takes you along the entire heritage of Hampi. There are many events.
The Goa Marathon also is somebody people were speaking about.
Correct.
That's also very, very scenic.
Correct, along the Goa River. Yeah, so there are many events which you would want to combine tourism with runs, and then you go for 3-4 days trip, go along. And
But एक
run.
बात बताओ, एक और चीज़ की पृथ्वी, now that you have so much knowledge, one obviously by general primary research, second by doing a lot of mistakes learning yourself, like you just using that knowledge for yourself, yeah, generally are you also helping others to do it, and if so, how can people reach out to you, how can they engage with you, if they're interested in, like I'm just trying to understand
Yeah.
कि अपने अपने में सब यूज कर रहे हो या सब लोगों को भी हेल्प कर रहे हो,
No.
how are you giving it back to the community as they say?
Yeah. So yeah, see, running has given me a lot of things in my life. I mean, I'm hooked to running for the rest of my life. So the group whom I am with, I keep advising them across various aspects from time to time. All the mistakes which I have learned the hard way, I do not want any runner to go through. If I can even contribute to 5% of their running journey, I'll be more than happy to do that. I have just also transitioned into formally coaching a few people.
Okay.
But so right now I'm coaching 3 people, so I'm also helping them. And anytime anybody wants to talk about running, I'm more than happy to touch base with them. My Insta handle is Prudhvi, spelled as Prudhvi.2307.
वो तो हम पिन कमेंट में डाल देंगे.
Correct. Or you can reach out to me anytime over WhatsApp.
वो भी कर
Yeah. So that's it.
बढ़िया यार. आई होप आज हमने इतनी बात करी है, एंड गिवन दैट फ्रॉम वेयर यू स्टार्टेड, free coupon or an entry allowed you to probably start your journey to run a sub 3 marathon, multiple things happening in between. By the way, best of luck for your first world major, which is about to come up in Berlin. By the way, will you be doing the Boston Marathon this year? Like, कैसा होगा?
So I'm also applying for US visa. So depending on how my US visa transitions into, I would love to do
वो तो
Boston
हो जाएगा.
Marathon.
मतलब ऐसा
हो
US
जाना
visa
चाहिए.
में the process lengthier. It's not the problem of you not getting it. Mostly,
Correct.
fingers
Yeah,
crossed.
fingers crossed.
But मतलब fingers crossed बोलना ही पड़ गया तो थोड़ा सा गलत हो गया. But I'm saying from where you've come from and where you started and now where you've reached, I think it's a inspirational journey. And if there is even one person who starts running because they saw this, I think I will call that as a success. At least I never thought of running. I saw you run, and I obviously, my wife Pushpa, she started running. Both of you are very close friends. I know she looks up to you like a coach anyway. And the idea is when I saw both of you running, I'm like, एक बार करके तो देखते हैं. इतना running क्या क्या मजा आ रहा है. And I can tell you that the one greatest advice I've got from you is stop running with music on or with your mobile, because I think most of us, when we start running, we depend on some sort of other stimulation कि run करते वक्त सुनेंगे ये वो. I just feel running without your phone and headphones is the most meditative state you can get into, because it is so hard, at least for me. It is about that 1.5 hours I'm running. It is just that hard pain which I'm going through, about just thinking about how to put the next leg, one leg ahead of the next. And although it's tough, but once you come back, go into the shower, come back and sit down, you just feel accomplished every time. Like, at least I do. I'm not too sure. I'm sure at your level also it does happen. It is so much more fulfilling post the run, and it is so much more meditative. Like, there's a different meditative state you get into. अब वो मुझे पता नहीं वो रनर्स हाई है या नहीं, मैं इतना रनर हाई वाले लेवल पे तो नहीं पहुंचा हूँ, बट इट इज़ सुप्रीमली मेडिटेटिव फॉर मी. I think the hardest point is just to tie up your shoes and just get to the road or a track, start running. Once you start, I think as kids, all of us were used to just running around doing shit.
Correct.
But the hardest, I think 90% of the job in running is done कि बस जूते पहनो और नीचे पहुंच जाओ. उसके बाद you will do something. वो heart rate, all of that. No disrespect to all of that science, but I'm just saying you can solve for all of that once you become used to it.
Correct.
Just start, because I started with a view कि let me do the 3-day, 3-week, 3-month rule कि मैं जाऊंगा ही जाऊंगा. I will like self respecting थोड़ा push करो कि भाई तुझे करना ही करना है. I started doing that. And I remember I started running in the evening because मैं सुबह नहीं उठ पाता हूँ some reason. I'm more of a night person. I went onto the road तो लाइट के जो वो टावर्स बने होते हैं ना जो लैम्प पोस्ट, तो I could run only from one lamp post to the other. Then I used to walk 5-6 lamp post and then run. Now धीरे धीरे बढ़ाया, 2 लैम्प पोस्ट रन करते हैं, 3 लैम्प पोस्ट रन करते हैं. And that generally helped. And that's when I got to that stage when you said कि भाई वो हटाओ. I think running that way has been supremely nice. But I still go through that grind of telling myself just tie some shoes, put on some shoes and start running. So I have really been a great believer that most people should run. And as I said, if we can just push one person off from their couch and go for a run, I think that's a success.
Yeah. See, that's the beauty of long distance running, right? You can keep running till the age of 60, 70, practically till the time you are on your deathbed. So that's why I keep telling the beginners, you are entering into a lifelong relationship with it. Do not worry about the initial hiccups. The eventual journey will always be beautiful. You're talking about 30 to 40 years committed relationship to this. So it's as good as having
I don't know if you just encouraged a lot of people or you did discourage them. 30-40 साल का
So you're talking about that, and then the benefits which come over a period of time largely outweigh the initial hiccups which one has to go through.
By the way, this is also true. I was trying to lose a lot of weight. Obviously, you start thinking about your diet and all. I could not lose after some time. But as soon as I start running, I could lose like 10% of my body weight over, I think, 1.5 to 2 months at best. By just being regular. Not regular ऐसा भी नहीं 7 दिन जा रहा हूँ. Regular means like 15 to 20 days a month. मतलब every second day, third day you're going for a run. Just that also helps a lot.
Yeah, that's why I tell runners, first 6 months, just enjoy the process of being able to love running.
भाई जूते पहनो और बस सड़क पे जाओ.
Just enjoy the process of love. You want to listen to music? Listen to music. You want to just get out, so you want to walk, you walk. But enjoy the process of that first 6 months. It is about that relationship. It is about getting to terms with your body.
And your body also adapts very quickly.
Very fast.
मुझे याद है when I was telling you earlier, November 19th I ran my half marathon. I registered. After that I went for my first walk. The first walk I did was 2 kilometers. And that's it, and I came back. From 2 kilometers to 21, I did that in 30 days. Within 30 days my body transformed to do that. Obviously 21 में वैसे timing के लिए नहीं कर रहा था. It was more about me just surviving so that my heart is still pumping and I could cross the 21 mark. But I could never think मैं 21 kilometers कर लूँगा. 30 days ago I could not do 2 kilometers. In 30 days my body transitioned to say have the ability to do 21. Obviously now I could do much better times than what I did probably 6 months ago. But
so I would
that
not
quickly
advise,
you can do that.
Though I wouldn't advise anybody to do the way you did because you also have your athletic background to support it. But
मतलब वो शायद वो फर्क हुआ होगा. But I'm just saying कि just the virtue कि तुम day 1 पे सोच रहे हो मैं नहीं कर पाऊंगा. Within 30 days your body can transform into to do very different things in a positive sense.
Yes, your body is a magician. It can perform tasks far beyond your imagination.
चलो ये अच्छी लाइन है, इस पे खत्म करते हैं. I think this was crazy long as well, and thanks for doing this, bhai. Thanks for watching the video. If you like the video, please press the like button, subscribe if you like it, and if you can share it with your friends, I'll be really happy about it. We are working really hard to make good videos, and hopefully future videos will be as exciting as the one you just saw. Thank you.